I'm going to do a quick demo, and Eileen's popped in to see us today. So carrying on the coastal scenes and boats theme, last week I did a little bit of a painting demo on painting waves. I don't know if I did this one here, but I did a couple of these. That was incredible. I thought this week I would focus a bit on drawing, approaches to drawing boats. So I've got various photographs here, and so, varying complexity, and some I think are going to be easier to draw than others. So try and sort through some of the issues. These are a couple of paintings that I did a few years ago. That one's fairly recent, a couple of years ago. This one I did for an article in the Leisure Painter magazine many years ago. So basically did a kind of stage brush for that one. So I'll start with this idea. I think that was the photograph that I used to paint that one. So really, if you're drawing boats that are sort of kind of face on, I think the easiest way is if they're either side on or face on. So something like this, I would in general, I tend to start from the tops of things anyway. So maybe I would perhaps just sort of rough out, kind of, very lightly where I want the main things to be. So I'm thinking if this boat here was about here, that's where I'd want to work. And then from there, I'll probably do a little bit of work on the cabin, because you've got lots of little shapes in here. So we start in the middle with some of these windows here, and they're almost square windows, not quite. I think they're just a bit like that. So those two are about the same size. The two either side of them, I think, are very slightly narrower. So I'm just going to go slightly narrower. Hiya. Hiya. And just a very slight angle just going down there. On this side, like that, across here. And then there's a very slight angle that way. So I think that part of the windows are sort of projecting out a little bit like that. So once I've got that, I can then have a look at where the top of the cabin comes in, and that's coming across here, and then the top of that's to about there. The edge of the cabin is about there. And looking at the space between here and where the hull starts, that would be about there. So basically, it's sort of starting somewhere, and then the middle of the hull is just slightly to the left of that bit there. So pop that in like that. That with that shape, and then this shape is curving around here. And the depth of that, now because I've drawn that already, I can then compare that to this. Just kind of measure that with my pencil. That's probably about 1.5 times as deep. So whatever I've got here, 1.5. Let's see, that's 1, about there. Half will be to about there. I think it's going to come down to about there. And that curves in slightly there. This is curving back that way. Looking at the space from the back of the hull to here. Again, I can measure that, compare that with something in the cabin, and that's about 3.5 windows. So about to there. So that is roughly where I imagined it was going to be, which is handy. So that's going to go back to there. And then do the same this side. A couple of windows, that comes to there. So that's the main shape, the main structure. All these little bits of rigging, whatever you want to call those, I can then relate those to where the windows are. Compare these distances across here, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's, as I say, that was the image I used for this one. I think looking at it, I made a few very slight changes, but it's not too different. Is that all good? Yeah. Easy. Similar sort of thing with boats. Something like this. It doesn't matter. Perhaps I'll go with that little one there. again, perhaps just kind of rough out where I want to work. So this is just judging it roughly by eye. I'm thinking, yeah, that's roughly where I want the drawing to be. But I could start with something like this shape at the top, this little triangular shape sail. It's going to go a bit like that, dips down a little bit. Again, you could compare the width and the height. Once I've got that, if I'm happy with that, this next sail starts a little bit fraction wider, and I can check the angles. Perhaps do that with that one. It's going to be that sort of angle. So curve in that sail, and again, maybe check that distance against the other one. That's not too dissimilar actually. So that to there is about to there. And then front sails, I don't know if you can see that, there's like a white sail just in there. Again, checking that angle, that's coming across here. And this point here is a little bit lower than that point. So I'm thinking to about there. And then that comes over, something like that, and then the next part is about there. Now they've got a join, haven't they? So it's got to come down a bit. Like that. And then we've got another little sail tucked in there. About there. Yeah, so it's just kind of working your way through the shapes really. And once you've got that, the big shape, you can then relate so that that ends where that sail is. That's there. And then look at that space there. Sorry, that's going that way, isn't it? Just, Still sort of seeing shapes, seeing how the big one shape is next to another.
You're used to different shapes of ice.
So we're used to just like a triangle. If you can kind of break it down, you get one thing right, then you can compare that one thing to the next thing. We'll see how wide. So those are the easy ones. I won't do all these, but maybe a hard one. Maybe I'll go with So, what I find hard about these sort of shapes is the boat's at an angle and you've got foreshortening. Yeah, so we're sort of seeing part of the top, part of the ends, part of the side, so it does make it a bit of a challenge. What I tend to do if I'm drawing this kind of boat is try and have a look at, so this back bit here, I'm going to draw on this. So try and imagine where the middle of that is. It's about there, middle of that bit. Sometimes you have, like that one's got a little notch cut out, so that's easier to visualise. This one's a bit more challenging. Sometimes you'd have like a rudder or something like that there, so that makes it a bit easier to unpack. So if you can have a look at that and that angle there, that's kind of useful to get you started. So that was the angle I want. Try and transfer that over. Right. The other thing I can do is just place that in front, hold it, take that away, see if we've got the same angle. If that helps, do that. What would I do next? Probably I'll then start from the front. The other thing you'll find about these sort of boats, or say something like this, is one side will appear that, like this one at the back, that feels a lot straighter than this does. This has got a lot more curve in it. So you might find that, I'm not sure if it's the case here, perhaps this side is a little bit straighter than that one. And again, you could use something straight like a ruler or a pencil and just pop that on the edge and just see how different that side is to this side. This side really curves in a lot more than that one does. So again, it's just something that might help you to see the differences. I'm going to sketch it out roughly. So if that helps, yeah, I think that curves around a little bit like that. I'm tempted to just get some of these shapes on the inside. So the fact that I've drawn a line there, there's a lot, that inside shape, there's a lot more on there. And then that's curving round here. Another thing you could do, which might help, almost like draw a rectangle around it. Or like that. Yeah, because you then know that's, you know, the sort of foreshortening is that much compared to that much. So the whole thing needs to fit into that sort of shape. So that might help me as well. So how different is that? It's nearly 2. So if I'm coming down to about here, I know that I probably need to sort of be drawing within that sort of space just for the top bit. Not worried about the bottom bit yet, but just that top bit. So yeah, that might help. Might help me to see those shapes. And that's coming down to that sort of corner. Then that will curve around. Yeah, that is helpful. I think. Something a bit like that. And as I say, in the middle, I've got that. Yeah, let's do about there. Perhaps bring that in a tiny bit. So the middle of that shape is about there. And then once you've got that, now I can't really. It's a bit of a dull photo this, so I'll just draw over that so that you can see what I'm looking at. So that is really the back and the bottom of the boat that I'm seeing. So up in the middle, I'm thinking how deep is that? Perhaps about to there. I get a nice shape up to there, and something that feels like it's symmetrical. So again, perhaps a tighter curve there than it would be there. So you won't have exactly the same curves. And then this one, this will come along a little bit. Obviously I can't see it because there's another boat in the way, but I'm imagining it's going to be something a bit like that. And then these bits, and the bit that you sit on, that's there. I'm doing this all with the roughing out pencil because to me this is more complicated. And then I could just go over, if I'm happy with this, I can then just go over it. I think that's, yeah, pretty much. So yeah, it'd be worth having a go. I mean, if you fancy just having a go at drawing, sketching, you know, try a few different ones. Sorry, you know, don't spend ages on them, but just see if you can get the basic shapes and basic proportions. See how you get on. How's that sound? Fancy a bit of boat drawing. It's also good practice if you are into drawing outdoors, sketching outdoors, which some of you are. It's good practice. Do it, work it out in the studio, get a chance to go out.